to our next scripture is Galatians 5:24. Yes, sir. Tanisha. And what version of King James says? What version of
King James 5:24, right?
Yeah, and what version?
King James.
King James, okay.
And they that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts.
All right. Can you read that one more time for me?
And they that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts.
All right. Now, another thing that stops us from understanding the will of God in our lives, from hearing God clearly, from living being in a spiritual relationship with God, is the fact that we are unwilling to crucify the necessary things in our lives that need to be crucified. And that is where the rubber hits the road. Because now, Sister Cunningham asked a question, or made a statement. She said, you know, a lot of times people don't understand what I need to do to get to where, don't understand what they need to do to get to where they need to be. A lot of times we look at what a lot of people have, what a lot of people have acquired, the positions that people have, and we think because they make it look easy, that's what I want, and I can do it too. But we don't know the story behind. There's a show I call Unsung.
Yes.
And with Unsung, what it is it's a show that talks about the story, the behind-the-scenes stories of a lot of different musical groups, the things that they had to go through, their trials, their hard times, selling records out of the trunk of their car, and dealing with crooked producers and things of that nature. And how when you see them on stage, you would never know everything they had to go through to get to where they are today, or to get to where they were at the height of their success. I say that because now, when it comes to us as Christians, when we see other Christians who are doing well, we don't know how many times they had to be nailed to their own personal cross, and how much stuff they had to be crucified in their own lives before they could get to where they are. We don't know the battles that they fought. We don't know the storms that they had to overcome. When we talk about battles, I don't mean just battles with other people. We don't know the internal battles that they had to fight. We don't know their own personal demons that they had to deal with. We don't know how many times they had to cry. We don't know how they've been crucified to get to where they are. And so, when we talk about receiving the promises of God and what stops us from time to time from hearing God's voice clearly, it is that we allow our flesh to rise up and to interfere with what God is trying to say. Yes, sir. Deacon Barnes.
Yeah, you know, I worked in General Assembly. We gave a lot of overtime on Saturday and Sunday. But I had a son that wanted dad to take him to football games, take him different places. So I had to sacrifice. What was important in my life? To raise my son with God. Right. And that's what a lot of times, people give the children materialistic things, but they don't give them, they're growing up, they think they really need, and think that this is what the child wants to buy, but really what you want.
It's that time.
Yeah.
So people don't know the sacrifice. They may look at your relationship with your son, but they don't know the sacrifices you had to make in order to have the relationship that you had. And it goes, and that is what happens. A lot of times we don't know the sacrifices that people have to make to get to where they are. But now, here's where it also becomes important. Only you know the sacrifices that you have to make in your life in order to get to where you need to be in proper position. No one can tell you the sacrifice. Don't ever let someone tell you you need to sacrifice this, or you need to crucify this, or you need to crucify. Only you know what you need to crucify. And because only you know what needs to be crucified in your own life, whether it be relationships with other people, whether it be, you know, a job that pays very well but it causes you to lose your family, whether it be holding on to that car which you love with all of your heart, mind, and soul, but you can't afford the bill, whether it be, you know, whatever it may be. experience God clearly so that you can make sure that you're in a proper position. For 30 years, Jesus lived a perfect life and probably had a pretty good life. He sacrificed it. He went a 3-year missionary journey, being obedient to God as his heavenly Father, doing what God had called him to do, what he was born to do. After 3 years of healing the sick, raising the dead, after 3 years of casting out demons, after 3 years of those who were blind all their life receiving their sight, after 3 years of those who were born crippled all of a sudden being made whole, after 3 years of the woman with the issue of blood being completely dried up, after 3 years of doing all of this, and after 3 years of having a successful ministry, he sacrifices it all to go to the cross. And when he goes to the cross, it appears as though he lost everything. But what you'll notice is that when he rises from the grave, he doesn't just rise the same way that he went in. He rises with more post-crucifixion than he had pre-crucifixion. I say that because a lot of times we're afraid to crucify things in our lives because we're afraid of what we're going to lose. But what Jesus is showing us is that if you're willing to crucify your flesh for the sake of the kingdom, what you get on the back end is so much greater than what you would have lost. And it may not always come back to you in the form of material gain. Sometimes it comes back to you in the form of peace of mind. Sometimes it comes back to you in the form of a cold heart. Sometimes it comes back in the form of your family being brought back together. Sometimes it comes back in the form of having peace that surpasses all understanding, with more strength, more power. And that's Jesus didn't come out of the grave with maturity. He came out with all power in his hand and a position seated beside his heavenly Father. So I say that because when we talk about being positioned for the promise, we have to be willing to make the necessary sacrifices in our lives and take no thought for what you give up. Don't try to hold on to it. When you give it up, you've given it up. And you don't do it for the sake of saying, I'm going to get more in return. Because then that becomes selfish. And you have the wrong motives. And you got to have the right motives whenever you're doing something for Christ. But you do it with the understanding of, this is what my Heavenly Father wants me to do. And if I don't get anything in return, I'm satisfied with just being obedient to what He's called me to do.